Welcome, traders. In this video, we're going to go over a new and exciting use for the ZoneTraderPro tools involving the VIX. In one of my previous videos, I've talked about the website Spot Gamma. And full disclosure, I receive no compensation from Brett over there. Brett, on a daily basis, puts out commentary both before and after the market. And based on some of this commentary, I asked him some questions and he was very responsive. The questions dealt around the VIX. The VIX is the ratio of options in the put to call, and the VIX is also called the market's fear gauge. So basically, the higher the risk, like you see 3 days ago, the higher the market is pricing in uncertainty and fear. As the VIX drops, then the market should become more stable. So the symbol that I'm using up here is VX9D, and that is, from what Brett tells me, basically the VIX reflecting the options traded in the last 9 days. You can also get just the regular VIX. He says this is just a little bit more quicker. So basically, what we're seeing when we see this here is we're seeing that long trades are going to be favored as the VIX is falling, and short trades are going to be favored as the VIX is rising. But there's a problem with the VIX. The VIX isn't something that's actually traded. So the next question came, what about using a stock that represents the VIX? And there is just such a stock. Its symbol is VXX. It's an iShares traded stock. Now, what is truly amazing to me is just how well the ZoneTraderPro divergence indicator works on this symbol. So when we receive a trading signal, ZoneTraderPro by default does not make a signal that doesn't work disappear. That's what you're seeing here in this accumulation marker, where the accumulation divergence became non-divergent on this bar. But as you can see, if we were a day trader in the stock symbol itself, we could be buying here. We have special divergence up here. Again, we have special divergence down here. We have special divergence and distribution here. We have accumulation here, and it just keeps going. And this is something that is really amazing to me. Now, the other thing we can do with the VXX is we can put our delta strength indicator on here to see individual trades. So what that setup looks like is basically this. I want to reconstruct the tape and I want to look for trades of 2,500 or more. The KP2 ratio, I want to reconstruct the tape with a minimum filter of 500. This isn't something that I've extensively tested, so this is something that you probably would want to do yourself. I put a price deviation value of 15 cents in here, and the deviation contracts are 1. The zigzag ZTP is set for 15 cents, and the delta divergence is again set for that same 500 to 20 million max filter, again for 15 cents and 1 in the deviation contracts. The second thing we do is we can then put the VXX on a 10 range chart with our delta strength, and we see these great delta strength numbers coming in at highs and lows along with our regular order flow. And I'm really only looking for 3 order flow signals here, both of the POC order flows and the ZTP order flow. So I've got it set just for that. Now remember, when we see either a blue or black delta strength indication, that means that we have abnormally high volume, thus indicating a reversal like we saw here and we saw here. And that high volume was actually leading up into it here as we traded down and then traded into this POC extension. Now what I've done is I've gone and created different wave files so that I know that this is a VIX sound, and you notice that you have to reverse them. So a VIX sell signal is actually a buy signal for the ES. So I've gone and created some special files. There's instructions on how to do that on the blog. And then here, I've only told it to give me the ZTP order flow, the extension zones, and these are the numbers for the absorption and the POC. Next, on the delta strength, I have no filter set at all. And again, this is something that hasn't been tested, but I strongly suggest you would do so. And then I just have the regular VWAP on here. Okay, now what I found interesting in the past couple weeks that I've been watching this is the market makers that are dealing this stock are the ones that are really driving its price, and it's not necessarily the market orders which are driving price. What is interesting here is that the black line on the KP2 ratio is set at 0, and you can see that from basically the start of the day, the cumulative delta was just on a straight line up. Now, what I find interesting is that there was a significant amount of delta strength large order buying, but it was being absorbed in the form of limit orders, and that's what's being told to us by our KP2 ratio. So while there was a lot of buyers here, there was somebody on the other side that wanted to take a short position with limit orders, and we see the KP2 ratio telling us that. So when we look into a little detail here, we see that all the way from the top up here, we had some significant market orders for large lots to buy, but it really wasn't until we got to the bottom here where we had this 10,000 lot trade, and over here we had this 16,000 lot trade, that price actually started to reverse and go higher. So it's really important that you watch what actually the price is doing, and you also watch what the delta strength is doing on the order flow chart. For me, the important numbers come on the order flow chart. As you can see, as we were bottoming here at 1254, we had a fairly decent number here of 12,000. And then as we came back down to test that low price, we did it on high volume and we got a significantly higher number. And notice up here where we are going to start to sell off, we have a almost 27,000 number. So what I would caution you to do is look more at the delta strength on the order flow and only really look at the really large lots trading on the individual trades, because we really want the combination of both high volume and a high delta strength number. Okay, so what did this look like on Friday? Well, you could see we had a series of really great trades beginning at 11 a.m. There was at least 6 going into just 12:30. I have created a Bloodhound template, but it needs just 1 or 2 more things, because as you can see, I've circled this trade right here. This trade is a strong trend reversal, good for over almost 13 points. But we had order flow, and we had the order flow from the VXX that I was looking for, but I didn't get a signal. So that means I have to add a look back into the Bloodhound formula. The Bloodhound formula itself isn't very hard. All I'm basically looking for is the VXX order flow with any combination of my ES order flow. And again, what basically just needs to happen is I need to be placing a look back, which is right here, to get this to function properly. Now, what is important to note is, again, how ZoneTraderPro is responding to the patterns. This is a 5 zigzag chart, which means every 5 points we get a zigzag. So down here we start off this pattern with an exhaustion pattern. We then have these trades here. And what is interesting and why this is really just so important is this trade right here, there would be a pattern there, and that would be a trend trade pattern. But as you notice from Bloodhound, we were only being given buy signals here. And using this theory, we would have received no sell signal. So this is why this is extremely important. Now, this idea is also something that can be traded with Blackbird, and that is something that I am seriously going to look into. Now, in order to set this up, you need the most current version of Bloodhound because you need to add the VXX symbol in there by creating a special instrument in the NinjaTrader control panel. So that's really the only trick to this. And if I previously said Friday, I meant Thursday. This is trading from Thursday. Friday was a holiday. Okay, so what did the trading charts look like? Well, where we have this exhaustion pattern right here, we can see that on the VXX chart, we had both special divergence and we had distribution divergence. Again, I'm changing the colors on the VXX chart because normally right here, this would be displaying red for the ES, but I'm changing the color to green to signify that it's a buy on the ES. As we get down to here at this basic reversal pattern right here, we have again distribution divergence, and we have our sell signal on the ES chart. Then as we get to this trade, this long trade here, we can see we didn't have divergence, but the pattern was a standard counter trend resistance zone here, along with down here. And as you can see, as price rose, the VXX just continued to drop, and that's why we received no sell signal here. Now, we wouldn't want to be selling this because we would be in a strong trend reversal. And again, look at what the KP2 ratio is doing. It's going straight sideways. So that's something we don't want to get involved with. As we come down to the buy signal here for the strong trend reversal, what do we have again? Well, we have over here, we have a standard trend trade with distribution divergence, and we have some large lot traders right at the apex. And that's what leads us into that next 13-point trade. The next trend trade from the ES chart was right here. And again, you can see that we had a large lot seller up here, and then price falling with order flow on both charts. We then had our accumulation signal here on the ES, and on the VXX chart, we were given special divergence. So what that means basically is from this point to this point, instead of being net buyers here, they were net sellers to the tune of negative 2,363 shares. And that's why this special divergence is so important when you see this. So we had special divergence on the VXX, and we had accumulation divergence on the ES. In the last trade, we again had accumulation divergence occurring there. And we had order flow on the ES in all three spots, but it wasn't until about here that we had the break in the VXX. And again, you were being given this warning that you needed to be understanding whether you should be getting long, because again, we had special divergence here. And like I said, the divergence patterns work very good, but they're also working in conjunction with the KP2 ratio, because look at all this buying that's going on right here. Well, that buying is being absorbed, and what we're seeing is we're still seeing that from the low to the high, there are smaller sellers that are not being picked up by the delta strength. So we have a combination of a high KP2 ratio, in this case over 6,200 shares per tick, and we also have the special divergence going on from all the contracts. So again, what this is basically doing, it's putting everything together, and it's taking into account the volume that comes in from dealers that are trading the options that need to hedge those positions. And like I said, if you haven't checked out Spot Gamma, Brett gives you some really important information, and it really is worth the price that you pay, in my opinion. To highlight a couple trades from Thursday that I took, when I saw these large delta strengths coming in here, I went long at 31.42 here after I had a good order flow signal, and that was a pretty easy trade there. Then I passed on a second long trend trade right here, and I'll show you the reason why. The VIX 9D wasn't much of a help. It had come down and had bottomed at 935, but then it had started to rise, giving me a little bit of concern. Then as we see on our VXX chart, when the trade is going to occur, we do have two ZTP order flow signals here, and we do have down bars. So that's why we get our signals back here. But what I was concerned about is I was concerned about the large buyer back here along with the VIX 9D, and I was then concerned about the basic consolidation that was going on here, and that consolidation worry proved correct, because then the VXX traded significantly higher. So even though that would have been a quote-unquote successful trade, there would have been a lot of doubt in whether or not it would have succeeded, and I definitely would have moved my stop and not risked anything at all. So that was a trade that I'd just rather not take. A little later in the day, we had a trade that was much more favorable. We entered a strong trend. I took this strong trend reversal here, and you could see that as we approached the target, I initially entered here when I had this black delta strength with a strong number. I added to the trade down here with the black delta strength and took a little over 6 points out of that trade, even though that was going to go for over 20 points in a very strong trend. So all in all, some really good trades. And if you should have any questions about this, please be sure to give me a call. And thanks for watching. Have a good day. Stay safe.